Hello and welcome to Teams Tips. We are so excited that you're here with us today. We're going to be learning and discussing how and why we're saying goodbye to Avaya and instead saying hello to Telephony. But before we begin, if you've not attended one of our Teams Tips previously, I am Amanda Pritchard. I have the absolute pleasure and delight of serving as the Events and Outreach Specialist in the Office of Information Technology. We've been hosting these sessions weekly throughout the summer, and I wanted to call a little bit of attention to some of the features and functionalities in Teams. So if you're new to a Teams live event, this is a little bit different than a Teams meeting. First, your audio and video do not come through. So the way that we focus on interacting with you is actually through the internal chat. Amy, are you able to pull that slide for me? The internal chat is the main way that we communicate. So we'll have that information up here in just a second for you. But the internal chat has, sorry, I'm pulling it. Let's see here. So the internal chat is the main way that we communicate. If you'll notice, we've already posted a link in that box. So you should be able to navigate there. I've got a screenshot on this slide that shows you exactly what it looks like on your screen. If you can, just navigate to that little text box, and I see we already have a number of people that have liked that post. That's where you're going to go if you have a comment or question that you would like to submit to us today. Your screen will show it, ask a question at the bottom. Feel free to interact with us. We love having your comments and we welcome any of your interaction. If you need to open up closed captioning on your device in the live event, if you go to the bottom of your screen and hover over the right corner, there's a little CC option. You can turn that on if you'd like to utilize closed captioning today. Let's see, and then next slide, please. Amy, thank you. If you're looking for additional Teams tips, we've got a full schedule listed on the next slide here that will tell you the other events that we have coming up in August. So I know we've got Microsoft Stream coming up next week, which will show you how to record and upload videos. Then we have a Teams trivia session, which is going to allow you to ask any of your Teams questions that you have to our Teams experts. And then our final session will be on Microsoft Forms, which will allow you to create registrations and surveys using the Microsoft suites. So those are upcoming classes that we're going to be able to share with you, and I hope that you'll consider registering for them because we love having you all attend. Okay, next slide. So today we have the pleasure of saying hello to Poulin Bott. He is the Director of Customer Service and IT Business Affairs in the Office of Information Technology. So Poulin has spearheaded the migration efforts for telephony with the early adopters and has worked directly with departments throughout the process to ensure that the highest standards of quality are met. Poulin is also a recent recipient of the Staff Council CARE Award. And for those of you who are not familiar, the CARE Award stands for Celebrate Achievement, Reward Excellence, and recognize staff who have demonstrated superior performance, offered outstanding customer service, and performed acts that have enhanced the image of the university. There are few people that I have met that have seamlessly achieved every one of those items and beyond. Poulin embodies those characteristics, and it is my great pleasure today to say hello to Poulin.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Amanda. That was, wow. I don't know what to say, but I appreciate that. So today we're going to talk about Teams telephony. And in our previous Teams Tip at 2, we actually went through a live demo of everything that it kind of entailed. And let me just share my screen here real quick. Make sure that we can. Okay. Amanda, are we good? Sorry, I can't see it anymore.
Yes, it looks perfect.
Perfect. All right, so in our previous session, we talked about all the features of making a phone call and what you can do. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that. So the topics of discussion for today are going to be the current project status, where we are, where we're headed, how you can get more information about if your area hasn't moved and migrated to Teams telephony yet, when that will happen. We're going to talk just briefly about the telephony training from last time and how you can access that. So if you want to learn more about it, and or if you missed that, you'll be able to do that. We're going to talk about delegation and rules. That's one of the calls we get all the time. And previously, you had to call IT to do forwarding and all sorts of crazy stuff, get calls on your cell phone. All that kind of goes away with Teams telephony. And I'm going to show you really how all that works. And we'll talk briefly about call queues as well. Device overload is something that I hear all the time, that all my things are ringing. How do I manage that? So we're going to talk about that. Conference call setup, this is another question we get all the time about using Outlook versus the Teams calendar, when you use what. And I'll share some tips and tricks on that. And then we're finally going to talk about the power of do not disturbs and its pitfalls. And then we'll have some time for open discussion, so you guys can ask any questions that you have. So the current state, we're actually halfway there. As of today, or as of this week rather, we're halfway there. This link right here that's on this presentation that we can share with you, or you can go to the OIT webpage and access it that way. We'll tell you exactly where we are on our phones and EXO migration, and it'll tell you what percentage of that department is done. So what we really do when we migrate a department is first migrate the telephony side of it. And then a week later, we go through the Exchange Online migration. And what that really entails is going through and migrating our email that's on-prem servers right now, that's hosted at UT Dallas, and we migrate those to the cloud onto Microsoft servers, and that's where it becomes Exchange Online. And the reason why we're doing that is so that it adds a ton of different feature sets that you get with the telephony. So phone has to happen first, then we go to EXO, and that's the kind of process we take to migrate your department. So how do we actually figure out all that stuff? Well, our IT guys in the back end have worked super hard to identify as much of that information as we possibly could. So all the email addresses that you guys use, everything that you use currently, distribution lists, all those types of things. And we give that to whoever the dean or the VP of your area designates. And we work with them in working sessions to identify all the things, make sure all the phone numbers are correct and all those things. And then we actually migrate everything over. Now, we're humans, so there's going to be a chance that we might miss a few, or we have some human errors, but that's okay. We have a way of fixing that. If you notice that you're supposed to be migrated and you don't see the phone icon on Teams, that's all right. Just let your IT person or somebody in your department know, call the help desk and let us know. And we're happy to make sure that that gets resolved quickly. Right now, we're anticipating that this whole process will be completed by November. And we're going to then look back at the old servers and make sure everybody migrated over, and whoever didn't, we'll clean that up as well towards that time. So it has been, I won't say it has been painless, but it's been pretty smooth compared to what the juggernaut of things that we're moving. I think I've been relatively pleased with the process. And so we're super excited about it. And for those of you that have migrated, I really hope that you're enjoying the new features and the flexibility. And today's training is all about that. And hopefully we'll give you some tips and tricks to mitigate those calls when you don't want them, and to make sure you get those notifications when you do need them. So this is what we discussed in our last telephony training at the Teams Tips 2. Making calls, receiving calls, how do you set up all your devices, a second ringer, if answering your delegated calls, voicemail, ringtones, parking a call and picking it up on a different device, how to create favorites, groups, and speed dials, and your contacts and history. So again, that's actually on a YouTube, on the OIT UT Dallas YouTube channel. The quickest way to search for that is by going to YouTube and typing in UTD OIT, and you'll see the list of all the videos that Amanda's been putting together, and you'll be able to go through that training. It's about 34 minutes, and you can definitely speed it up and just go to the sections that you find relevant, and hopefully you find that useful. So please check that out. So first thing we're going to talk about for today's session is delegations and rules, phone calls and voicemail, right? So delegation and rules, what I mean by that are, let's say I am super important. I used that example last time. I'm not, I promise you. But if I was, and I needed to have other people answer my calls for me, then I would need to use the delegation feature to make sure that I gave them access to be able to do that. Previously, you'd have to call IT, fill out a TSR form, and we would have to get all sorts of information from you and then do that. We don't have to do that anymore. And then the other side of that is voicemail, right? So with voicemail, you used to have to go to your Avaya phone and record your voice message. And then when you were going to be out of the office, you had to click, change that voice message over to your out of office message. And it was a hassle. It was so 90s, 2000s, 2019, we'll just say 2019. In 2020, you don't have to do that. You can actually set it to when you set your out of office on Outlook, your phone automatically understands that and puts your out of office greeting instead of your regular voicemail greeting. So we'll talk about that in a second. All right, so calls. No more calling IT. I think I iterated that. Not that we don't want you to call us. We absolutely love it when you guys call us, but we want it to be meaningful and something that you really need help with. So if you go to the settings and the way to get to settings in Teams is by clicking on your picture or your initials at the top right, and then clicking on the settings button. When you do that, you're going to see some options under call answering rules. And we're going to talk about two different features here. First one is call rings to me. So that means when somebody calls me, that call is going to ring to me. And the other one we'll talk about is forward my calls. So if a call rings to me, I want to be able to answer it. But I can also set it to where it can also ring to my delegates. So in this section over here, you might notice, and if you click on this option right here, you'll see a menu option pop up similar to this. And you have the option of also ringing to my delegates or a single person. So let's say Nurali, I need Nurali to be able to answer my calls for today. Then I can say call rings to me and it rings to Nurali. So either one of us can pick up my calls. And if neither one of us answer it, it goes to my voicemail after 20 seconds. And I can change that setting as well. So that's call ring to me. Now let's say I'm not going to be here and I just want all my calls to be handled by Nurali. Then I would click the second radio button, which is forward my calls. And again, I would do the same exact thing. I could say, forward all my calls and have them go straight to voicemail, have them go to a new contact, have them go to my delegates. And what my delegates is a group of people that can get those calls. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. And then, or it could go to an individual that I've already set before and they'll show up at the bottom. So the also ring feature, right? Call rings to me and also rings. And like I said, when you click on that, it gives you a few more options. You can set it to my delegates, no one else. So that's also an option. So it just rings. It doesn't do anything. It just rings to me and it doesn't go to voicemail. It just keeps ringing. And then eventually after 20 seconds, it'll go to the voicemail. Or we can do the call groups with, over here I have Rosetta and Nurali. I can set it to one of them. And then again, if it's unanswered, you can have it go to voicemail, a new contact. So this is important. So a call rings to me, and then I have it set to also rings to my delegate or no one, it doesn't matter. If nobody answers from my first menu of options here, if it goes unanswered, I can have it go to voicemail, or I can have it then go to a new contact or a group like we talked about before. So hopefully that was clear. If not, just play with it and test with your cell phone, and I bet you'll get it in no time. Or call us, and we'll be happy to walk you through it. So voicemail, that's the next piece we talked about. Voicemail has its own set of rules and things that you can do. So you can let the caller record a message. You can let the caller record a message or be transferred to somebody else. So like, for example, let's say, again, I have a situation where I want them to be able to leave me a voicemail, but then I want to give them an option to just forward that call to Nurali, because, that's just the way my workflow works out. So I could do that, and that all those options will be here. So how would you like us to handle the call when they go to voicemail? So first option is let the caller just record a message. That's normal. That's the default that it will be at. The next one will be let the caller record a message and then be transferred, and then end the call without playing your greeting. So that would just mean that it goes to voicemail and it says, thank you for calling Flynn. I'm not here right now and I'm unable to take your voicemail either. If you need immediate help, please call the help desk at 972-883-2911. And then it just hangs up. So I don't get a voicemail after that. And there might be some use cases where that could be useful. And then transfer the call to someone else. So I could, once they leave a voicemail, I could just have it automatically transferred to somebody else. So that's the difference between this first one, where they get the option to be transferred, versus this one where it automatically transfers them to somebody else. So that's all about the rules in voicemail. Then if you scroll down in the voicemail settings, at the very bottom, it's going to say out of office settings. So when should your custom out of office greeting play? So you can record your custom out of office greeting ahead of time, and you can say all the time. So if I just want to manually set it to all the time, I could do that. If maybe I'm not a fan of Outlook and I don't use Outlook all the time, I use a different mail app, then you can come in here and you'd have to set this. Or you can have it to when I have Outlook auto reply. Or you can set it to when I have an out of office calendar event. So sometimes you'd have an out of office for just 1 hour. So you haven't really set out of Outlook to be, to auto reply to everybody. Hey, I'm currently out of the office. I'll get back on this date and get back to you at that time, right? So we can do that in Outlook. That's that option. But if I have a calendar event that's marked as out of office, this will play that out of office greeting whenever I have that set. So that's pretty powerful. And then just for accessibility, there's a option for text to speech customized greeting option. So if the caller on the other end has some disabilities, you can actually create custom greetings that will actually play it to the way they need to be able to access that information. So you can type out your out of office greeting here for those situations. Okay, so that's voicemail. Amanda, I'm going to pause right there. Are there any questions at this point?
We do have a couple. Sabrina wanted to know if there are default settings already set for our voicemail.
That's a great question. So yes, there is a default setting already set for your voicemail, but it won't be your custom setting. So I would definitely encourage you all to go in there and set up your custom greeting and say, hey, this is Sabrina, leave me a message. Good question.
So then we had one more pull in. I know your next slide is about to discuss delegates, but somebody was asking too that if they had previous delegates assigned on the old system, does that automatically roll over on the new system, or are they going to need to create new delegates in the new system?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, the old system was completely different. There's no way, because a lot of that stuff was done on the back end on the phone itself. So there's no way to transfer that over to Teams. So you will have to initially set this, and we're going to talk about really how easy that is, and allow you to. It will allow you a lot more control of being able to manage your own system the way you want it to be managed. If you have an assistant, you can initially you'll have to make sure that you make them a delegate, and then you can give them access to manage everything going forward from there, so that you never have to touch it again. So we'll talk about all those things next, and that's a great segue. So we'll go to delegates. So there's two types of in delegation. There's two different things. One is people you support, and then the other is your delegates, right? So if I'm an administrative assistant, or if I'm in some sort of a call group where I support somebody else's delegation, then I will come into, again, it's in settings. You go to delegate settings, and when you see your delegates, that's where you will kind of see all those things. And we'll kind of talk about that here in just a second. So delegates can receive calls on your behalf. So that's key to remember. If you set all the settings, and the delegates can make a call on your behalf, and they can receive calls on your behalf. And that's probably what you want to do. But there might be a time where you just want them to receive calls, but not be able to make calls on your behalf, right? Why is making calls important? Well, a lot of times, I may want somebody else to see if they can get a hold of this person. And then if they do, then transfer it to me. So that's where make a call is really important. And receive a call is important because obviously when you get a call, if you're in a meeting or something else, but you still want somebody to be able to receive those calls, that's what you do. And this third setting is what I was kind of talking about, where you can have that option of allowing your delegate to make all future changes. So why is that important? So the last one says change call and delegate settings. So in this instance, when I added a delegate, I added Nurali Muhammad, and I selected he can make calls for me, he can receive calls for me, and he can change call and delegate settings for me. And what that will allow him to do in the future, right? Let's say Nurali was the one that supports me, and in the future he's going to be out of the office for a couple of days. Instead of having to go to me and have me set up another delegate, he can actually come into my delegate settings on his team's application. So he doesn't need my computer, or he doesn't need anything from me. He can go in there and add another delegate and give them the same options that you see here. So it's pretty cool how that works. All right, so any questions on delegates before I move to call queues?
There are no questions at this time.
Awesome. Well, and we'll have some time at the end too if you guys think of anything else, but it's pretty simple and it's really just these three options and that's all there is. And then, if you are, so let's say in this case, I add Nurali as my delegate, and in his team's application, he would come over here to people you support. So there's a different tab, and that's where he would see all my settings. And let's say if he supports 3 other people, then he would see all their settings as well. And all those things will kind of be right there. And over here, I didn't mention this, but to add Nurali, I just would start typing his name, Mohammed, and then it'll pop up with all the names of Mohammeds, and then I'd pick Nurali, and then I'd get this option. And you can have multiple delegates. As you can see, I have Nurali as added as one, and I also have Braseda as another one. That's so you can have multiple people as your delegates initially. But it's entirely up to you how you customize that, and you can do that. All right, so next we'll go to call queues, and we're going to talk through some, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question on delegates? Sure. Well, first, I'd like to delegate all of my calls to Nurali as well, so sign me up, and we'll take care of that. But then we had an additional question come in that if they add a delegate to receive calls for me on my behalf, does that mean my delegate's phone will ring after the call is not answered by me, or does it go straight to my delegate?
That's a good question. So remember over here, when we said, you can set it however you want to. So you can remember 2 options, call rings to me and my delegates at the same time. So I could pick my delegates from here. So that would mean call rings to both of you guys at the same time. And whoever answers first gets a call. Or you can say forward all my calls. And that forward my calls will give you the same option. Oh, sorry. Yeah, forward my calls, this one. So you could pick either one of them and you can choose how you want that to happen. Did that answer that question?
Yes, I can't wait to set that up to have Nurali take my calls. Thank you.
And I'll just make that clarifying point. Neither Braseda nor Nurali take my calls. They were just kind enough to let me test this feature on them when I was taking these screenshots. And what I forgot to do, so this is important, so when I made that setting over here, you can see I had it set to my delegates and I forgot to take it off. And then I was doing some other testing and I called myself and my call didn't ring to me. And I was like, wait, what happened? And then 5 minutes later, Braseda called me and she was like, did you mean to call me? And I'm like, oops, sorry. And then I changed my settings. So
very well. Well, I guess I won't have him be my delegate.
I mean, you can. There's nothing he can do to control it. Actually, there is. So he can go to people you support and turn it off if that's not something somebody accidentally does for him. So you can do it and just see if he doesn't notice. All right. So Nurali and Jake and some others on our team have been working super hard. So part of the call migration has been that we set up call queues where they're necessary. So front desk. There's so many different scenarios, right? Maybe there's a common phone number that your group has where it rings to just 4 different people. If you remember from our last training, we kind of talked about how every person is only allowed 1 phone number in Teams. That's the way the system is set up. You can't have multiple phone numbers. But if there's like a common area phone number for your department or your school or for whatever reason, and you need to be able to answer that call too, that's where call queues come in. It's a really powerful tool. There's a difference between call queues and a call center. We're not going to talk about call center today, but if you're interested in call centers, please email assist@utdallas.edu and let us know that you're interested in that. And again, Norelli and his team are really good about getting that process set up. We currently use a tool from Amazon called Connect, and our help desk has been using that for ever since we had to migrate remote due to COVID. And it's a pretty powerful tool. So if you've called the help desk since we all left campus, you've actually been talking to them remotely at their homes using Amazon Connect. So it's a pretty powerful tool and it works great. But today we're going to focus on call queues in a scenario where you're in the office or remote and you have common area phone numbers. And so what we're going to do for that first scenario that we're going to talk about is simultaneous. And Norelli, if you don't mind coming off of mute, can you explain to everybody what simultaneous is?
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, sure, let me take a minute to explain that. Now, let's say if you have a scenario where multiple individuals are answering one line, and the phone is actually in a different area. Now that we've gone virtual, you can actually answer the phone call from your computer, or you can answer it via a desk phone if you opt for one of those, depending on your situation and needs. So what happens is if you have, let's say, a 2222 as your main number, it used to be on every single Avaya phone at one point. All right, now that we've gone to Teams, that 2222 number has become a virtual number. Think of it as just a virtual number in the cloud, maybe. So, and that number, what it does is once you call that number, what we set up in the back end is if you said, okay, I want user number 1, user number 2, user number 3, and user number 4 to answer this line, but I want them to ring simultaneously, and whoever's available can go ahead and pick up that line. So when you dial 2222 in the back end, we have set up where the phone rings and all four users, and they're able to pick up that line and talk through just like they used to in the past, or it can escalate to a voicemail if no one has answered that phone line.
Thanks, Norelli. And just this, we just created this graphic for just an example, right? I mean, you can have more than 4 people or less than 4 people.
Yes.
And you know, we'll talk about this, I think, in a second, but you know, let's say I'm one of those 4 people and I need to go on a bio break. There's a way I can make sure that I get out of that queue, correct?
Correct. There's a very easy way to toggle on and off, and I think we have a couple of slides that will cover that as well. But it's very simple. You can simply just turn it off, turn it on, and there's also a feature where we can put your hours of operation. So if you're only operating and taking these calls between 8 and 5, we can set that up. And if you're not taking any calls on weekends, we can set that up so you'll never receive calls. I'll go to a voicemail if that's what you desire.
Awesome. And so with call queues, Norelli, is it so in this scenario, I call 2222 and it just rings everybody, right? It doesn't. There's no like. It's not like a greeting that says "Thank you for calling IT. We're going to now transfer you."
There's absolutely an option for that as well. So
okay.
There's some customization, and we ask series of questions how you like for that to be handled. You know, it'll give you the greeting. It'll go to the phone and ring everyone. Or you know, we can have a call handle up to 15 seconds or 20 seconds, and that if no one answers, it can redirect a call to someone else. Let's say there's an escalation point you want to set up, or an overflow. Even in this situation, we can go ahead and set that up to go to another individual or a group of people, and we can do that too. We can create tiers of this group as well.
Okay,
so
now you're hurting my head with all these options. But it's good to know that we have options. So I think if I took anything from this, the moral of the story is probably that if I have something in my mind, I should talk to you about it, and you will help me figure out what the best way to handle that is, right?
Absolutely. In fact, I can just add, we can even have call trees on there. So press 1 for this, press 2 for that. I think you're going to cover some of that later on, so I'm jumping the gun here. But yep, there's also options to do that.
Okay, so the next scenario we have is round robin. I don't want everybody to, all the phones to ring at one time. And I want them to ring one after the other. Is that what round robin is?
That is correct. And how round robin works is, again, you have all these features that we just discussed earlier available in this scenario as well, except when the call comes in, it doesn't ring on everyone's phone at one time. What it does is it rings at one person, first person, and then it goes, if that person couldn't answer or wasn't available, it'll go to the next person. Now, if you toggled out, it will never go there, right? So it'll go to that next person. Now, whoever answered that phone call, and round robin, what really means, if the second person answered and they're done with that call and they hung up and another call comes in, it will go to that third person. It always starts from the next person who answered the phone call.
Got it. And when you said toggle the switch, that's when, like, let's say if I'm going on a bio break and I get out of that queue, right? Yeah. Okay.
If you opt out of that queue.
Perfect. And then what's the serialized?
Serialized, that's a good one as well. Let's say if we have a main line and you have a dedicated person who is responsible to answer that phone call. Now they always have a backup or overflow of that individual as well. So that's when you choose a serialized. So there's a front desk individual that are always going to answer that phone call. That phone call will always go down that list and go to that person first.
Got it.
And once that person,
that's where it's different from round robin, I guess.
Correct. It will always go down that list and always go to that person first. And if they opt out and they're on a call and they can't answer and they have backup scheduled, and they will just go to that person.
Awesome. And then we have serialized plus.
What's the
difference?
Okay. I made that up, serialized plus. Now let's say it's the same scenario, and a person calls in. It will go to that person on the list. Instead of going one by one to the next individual, it can go to a group of people at once. So Summontel is calling after having that first person. So let's say if Amanda is the person who's going to answer that phone call, and if she's not available and she has you and myself as a backup, the phone will ring on both of our line, and whoever gets to it first, we can always race. Whoever gets to it first.
So this is no one home. That's perfect.
That's no one home.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nirali. I appreciate you walking us through that, and we appreciate what you guys do, because there's a lot of complex options that you guys can set on this. And this last is, the last slide right here that we're going to talk about is really how you opt in and out of that. So Nirali's team set up all this stuff for you, and he kept mentioning that word toggle on and off. So that's what this is. So when you go into Teams, again, you click on your picture, you go to settings, and then if you scroll down under the calls option, and now you're not going to see this until you have this enabled, right? So until you have these call queues enabled, you'll see the calls as soon as we add you to we migrate your phone to Teams. And once you get added to a call queue, you can come down, and this says financial aid CQ. So that's what he was using as an option. So if you're a part of multiple queues, they'll all be listed over here, and you can turn them all on at the same time, or just enter into one of them versus the other. And so that's the toggle on and off. So when I toggle it off, I'm no longer getting those calls and I'm out of that queue. When I toggle it on, it's that simple. I'm part of that queue. And the last piece there that's important to call out is that, I'm getting my own calls, right? But if I'm in a call queue, it differentiates that, and it will actually over here, it will look a little bit different, and it says call for, and it'll have the name of that call queue. So you'll know that this call is not coming for me pulling individually, it's coming for that call queue. So maybe you have a different way of answering that and said, thank you for calling IT. So it's really intuitive, and it's really helpful that it gives us that option. So, and I'm going to kind of go through quick here, because I know we might be running out of time. Amanda, do you want me to go through and leave the questions till the end, or do we want to answer some questions?
I think there's a few that we might be able to answer right now. I think Kelly is concerned with my pushing on Nirali, and so she might be wanting to take advantage of Nirali being a delegate as well. I'm not sure. So Kelly was asking, if she delegates somebody to receive her calls, does the delegate have to accept that delegation?
It depends on how you set it up, right? So if you have it to where it calls me first and then the delegate, then yes. Then it'll call you first and then the delegate. But if you have it to where it just forwards everything, and then it'll go directly to the delegate. And if the delegate doesn't answer, then that voicemail will still be left for you, not for the delegate.
Thank you. And then one more quick one. Is there a limit on the number of individuals that can have access to answer one shared phone number?
No, I think we can set, there might be a limit, but not anything that's going to be relevant. If there's a specific scenario where you want us to work with you on that, definitely reach out to Nerali, and he can definitely walk you through that. But from anything that we've seen on campus, we haven't found anything that has been an issue.
Okay, thanks for answering those.
Yeah, you bet. All right, so as promised, device overload. Yeah, that's me most of the time. Joking. It was me before, and then I figured out how to handle all my devices, and then, so computers, cell phones, and tablets, oh my, right? So in Teams itself, if again, settings is your friend, right? You're gonna click on your picture at the top right or your initials, and then go to settings. Once you get to settings, go to notification. There are so many options here where you can only get the information that's relevant for you. This looks overwhelming, I get it, but there's a lot going on, right? With mentions, messages. We're not going to go through Teams training right now, but there's a lot of things happening, and you want to make sure that you get the information you need, but not the ones that you don't want, right? So you want to make sure you come into your notifications, and once I set up my notifications the way I wanted them, the way they were important for me, my life became a whole lot nicer. So make sure you go to your settings, notifications, and there's a bunch of settings there, and change them. So for most of them, you have the option of banner and email. So do you want to get an email for everything? I actually turned off most of that. So if I'm mentioned specifically, that means somebody's trying to get a hold of me, pull in specifically. I have that. Yeah, you can email me about that. Otherwise, it's just a banner little thing that pops up for me. And then things that are like just trending, like I have messages that are in my feed, but they're not specifically calling me out. It's just stuff that people are posting, and it's trending. Just show that in my feed, in my activity feed. I don't need a message about that. I don't need to pop up about that. So when I have some time, I can go and check that. Similarly, on your tablet and phone, if you go to your Teams app, there's a setting. Again, click your little phone. Or tap on your initials or your picture, go to notifications, and you can set a lot of different things. With tablets and phones, right? Computers we can turn off, but cell phones we typically don't, because that's the whole point of having cell phones, right? So first thing you can set up is quiet hours. Don't do what I do. Your quiet hours should probably be 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. or whatever outside of your working hours. So enable your quiet hours and set those to what you need them to be. For me, I've set them up to almost 11 o'clock at night, and then it starts back up at 6 a.m. And what that does is it doesn't bother me. Phone calls, notifications, all those things only come outside of that 10:55 to 6 a.m. time. And then quiet days is also another good one. So I don't have that on, but you can certainly turn that on. And that means Saturday and Sunday, let's say I work just Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday, set those to quiet days. And so you don't get bothered during your off days for that. And then the other thing is notifications. So in their notifications, you have a lot of different options there as well. So one of the coolest ones that I like to call out is receive notifications. So I'm on my computer, my cell phone's sitting right next to me always, right? I'm tied to the hip with my cell phone. It'll go beep, beep, beep on my computer, and then it'll go ding, ding, ding on my cell phone. I'm like, man, that's kind of annoying, right? So the way I've set it up is always so I've set it up the wrong way. What you want to do is click this first one that says only when inactive on the desktop. So what that means is that if I'm away from my computer, it's on sleep or it's turned off, all that, then I can get notifications on my cell phone. Otherwise, if my desktop is active, just have my notifications come to the desktop. So hopefully that helps. There's a lot of other options that you can set for yourself on those devices. So feel free to explore those. Microsoft has a lot of great resources to kind of help you set those things as well. But hopefully this really helped with your device overload, and maybe you won't be that guy anymore. And then the next thing that we were going to talk about was conference call and meeting setups. So we get this question a lot. Do I use Outlook to set up my meetings and conference calls now, or do I use Teams? Because Teams also has that calendar button, and you can set up that, right? I typically would encourage you to use your Outlook if you use Outlook. And the reason for that is you can do the same exact thing. You get a lot more options. You're familiar with this interface. You can change a lot of these settings the way you want to. Maybe you have rules and different things that happen in the back end. So that's okay. Just use Outlook, and as soon as you turn on Teams for the first time, you'll have this Teams button in your Outlook. So if you don't see this, there might be a chance that you've never opened up Teams. So open up Teams, then open up Outlook, and you'll see this button. For Mac users, it's coming. I don't think it's just quite there yet, but it is in the works. So for Mac users, you can still definitely use a calendar app on Teams. But for most others, and you can also go to webmail, which is now going to be, once you're migrated, it will be outlook.office.com. Sorry, had a little brain fart there. But you can do it on webmail too, even if you don't use Outlook and you use some other mail app. And you'll see that Teams meeting, and just click that button and it'll add the Teams information on there. Alternatively, here's the difference. You can do the same thing in the Teams app. What this allows you to do is gives you additional functionality of, let's say you want to just have a meeting with a channel within a team that you've created, then you have that option of adding that channel. That's why this one is a little bit more powerful in that sense. But if you set up a meeting using the calendar feature on Teams, it will always, by default, you can't change it, include Teams meeting information. So let's say you really meant that for that to be an in-person meeting. If you schedule it from your calendar in Teams, it will always have a Teams live, join information on there. So it might confuse your users. So be careful not to do that. And these calendars are synced, so what you see on the team side is what you're going to see on the Outlook side. One caveat to that is that if you're still on Exchange on-prem, so if your department hasn't been migrated to Exchange Online yet, there might be a few sync issues to be aware of, and I would definitely encourage you to use the Outlook calendar in that case, or the webmail one. Okay, and then the final thing I wanted to talk about is the power of Do Not Disturb. Do Not Disturb, as you can probably imagine, is powerful because it turns off all notifications. That means you're not going to get calls, you're not going to get disturbed. That's the whole point. It's Do Not Disturb, right? It's like me turning off my phone, unplugging my things, and just focusing on something. So if you turn on Do Not Disturb, you're not going to get chat things, you're not going to get notifications on channels and teams. None of that will happen, and you won't get phone calls. All your phone calls will automatically follow your rules for after rings to me. So if it's set to voicemail, it'll just go to voicemail. If it's set to delegates, it'll go to set with delegates. If it's set to forward to one person, it'll go to that one person. All those things that we talked about. Now, so it's powerful, but what people forget about is that when you're done with being Do Not Disturbed, so when you want to be disturbed again, you have to make sure you go back and reset it to available. If you're doing a screen share or some of those things, automatically you'll be put on Do Not Disturb, and then it'll take you off as well. But if you manually set Do Not Disturb, you want to make sure you come back and make yourself available or busy, or one of those other options, so that you do get those notifications. For me, I love the Do Not Disturb feature, but there's certain people that are allowed to disturb me no matter what. So no matter what I'm doing, they should be able to disturb me, and they know that that's the setup for them. So in your settings, you can also go and actually set a group of people, a single person or more people, that can disturb you even while you're on Do Not Disturb. So that's pretty powerful, and you have that option as well. And that's all I got. So I know I went to the last three things together because they were pretty small slides, but I'm happy to take any questions. If you guys have questions for me or Nurali, or for the call queue stuff, we're happy to answer.
We did have one question come in that said they don't see a delegates option currently in their settings for calls. Is it not available until the offices are migrated over?
Until the offices are migrated over and you're a part of a delegation group.
Thank you.
Yep. So you won't see those features if you're not a delegate for anybody, or if you're not in a call queue, you won't see those call queue features.
Okay.
And that's why you saw Nurali's screenshots instead of mine, because I'm not part of any call queue, so I didn't have that option to show.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge. We have one more. Nope. No more questions right now. Sorry, false alarm. But I did want to take just a moment to share with everybody. We have our OIT forum that's coming up next week. So I wanted to share a little bit of information on that real quick just before you go. If you would like additional information like what we're sharing today. The OIT Forum is intended to be a knowledge transfer where we're sharing all of the latest upgrades and migrations that are happening on campus. So if you want to stay up to date with the latest technology and advances that we're making, please consider joining us. It's going to be August the 13th from 9 to 11 a.m. And I've just posted a link in the live event Q&A so that you can register online for that. We'll have updates on enhancing the VPN, upgrading to a new wireless network on campus, as well as our high performance computing group will give an update on the different grants that they've recently been awarded. So I hope you'll consider joining us at that. And in addition, we hope you will continue to join us at our Teams Tips at 2. Every Friday at 2, we'll have a full listing that's also in the live event Q&A so that you can register for next week's. So until then, thank you so much for joining.